Aloha, and thank you for joining me for habit 28 or 21. Um, I was I was thinking 28 like as if we're finished. Oh shucks. We got 7 more. Okay, so habit 28. Let's dig into this one. This habit is called set boundaries for yourself. This one is super hard. And actually, it's not just setting the boundaries for yourself that's super hard, it's keeping the boundaries for yourself that's super hard. Okay, so we're going to read section A, then B, then C, then D, and then we're going to complete section E. Okay, so what do I mean by set boundaries for yourself? If you don't know where a boundary is, you'll never know when it's crossed. Isn't that the truth? Let's read that again, okay? If you don't know where a boundary is, you'll never know when it's crossed, right? That's like so true. And that's actually so profound. Okay, let's read B. Boundaries can be emotional, financial, physical, and sexual. When thinking about your boundaries, ask yourself, what are you willing or not willing to allow for each type of boundary? Okay. Now let's read section C. Setting boundaries for yourself is self-care. That's an important, idea to embrace, right? In order to properly care for yourself, you need to know what your boundaries are and you need to keep them. Okay? So it shows self-care. But here's another awesome point. Setting boundaries also shows care for the people you love. Okay? It's like giving them a roadmap versus giving them a puzzle. Okay? Now I think you guys all know what I'm talking about. Sometimes we do the whole song and dance, right, with our significant others, where we think that they should just kind of know what we're thinking and know what we want, right? That's sort of giving them a puzzle. We don't want the people we love to have puzzles. We want them to have roadmaps so that they can get to exactly where they need to go and not be guessing. Okay? And so setting boundaries is like giving a roadmap, showing them the journey, okay, and how to get there. All right, now when we're right here, when you can identify your boundaries, okay, people know how to respect them. Okay, I have to say that again. When you can identify your boundaries, and then remember, that's not always easy, that's hard a lot of times. People will know how to respect them. And you'll know to respect theirs as well. Okay? And if people don't give you their boundaries, you will be smart enough to ask them for their boundaries. Okay? And what does that lead to? A more mutually beneficial and very fulfilled relationship with that person. Okay, so again, you have to know the boundaries, right? And how do you know a boundary? Okay? You have to set the boundary. You have to let people know what your boundaries are. You have to ask people for what their boundaries are. Okay? And then once you do, what results? A more mutually beneficial and very fulfilling relationship. Isn't that exciting? Okay, well, you might be asking yourself right now, well, what the heck is a boundary? Okay, and like, give me an example, Momi, of a boundary. Okay, let's read number 10, and I will explain to you how to set your boundaries. Okay, number 1. Understanding what they are for you and why you have them is the first step for setting your boundary. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay, now I like to do things for other people, but sometimes I can get resentful because I don't know how to say no. Now, whose problem is that? Mine, right? No one else is at fault except me, because if I cannot set my boundary, how can people respect my boundary if I cannot even set it or respect it on my own? So let me give you an example. Sometimes my daughter will ask me to say to watch the baby, okay? And I will go out of my way sometimes to watch the baby, even when I'm struggling to do things on my own. And then, get my own things done. And then I'm like frustrated and irritable because I couldn't get the things I really needed to get done. And so I'll get frustrated, or maybe I'll snap, or I'll use like an aggressive or ugly tone. Okay, all of that came because I wasn't able to set my boundary. Now my daughter has been like pretty good at like respecting my boundaries. Like I can even see her trying to to work within the parameters, and that's awesome, and I'm very thankful. And so anyway, I think I'm going ahead. Let me continue to list the steps in how you set your boundaries. Okay, let's get back to number 1. Understanding what they are for you, right? So I know in the case that I gave you, if I need to get things done, I have to say no to other people until I am able. Okay, so you have to be able to know what those limits are, okay, for yourself, and why. Why do you have these boundaries? Okay. Number 2, when you're setting your boundaries, be calm. And you probably can tell already, like that's hard for me, right? Because I'm high strung. But I try. You be calm, you be polite, and yet you be unapologetic when explaining them. I sometimes still have a hard time with that because I feel like I want to do and I should do everything for, just to make my husband's and my children's lives easier. But I cannot do it at my own expense. So I had to learn to be unapologetic, because basically boundaries are for your needs. It's self-care. So you have to do it. You're obligated to do it. You're obligated to yourself, and you're obligated to the people you love to set the boundaries and keep the boundaries. Because when you're ugly and nasty because you haven't kept your boundary, the relationship suffers. And that's what we want to try to avoid as much as possible. All right, number 3. Set your boundaries by being able to explain to one another why you have the boundary in the first place and how you feel when it is crossed. Okay, so if, say for instance, someone crosses a boundary that I already explained, right, to them. Okay, they know that they've crossed the boundary, possibly, but they don't know what happens to me when they've crossed the boundary. So I also have to do that, explain to them what happens to me when they cross my boundary. Okay, and I'll explain all of these things once we're done explaining every single boundary or every single strategy. We've gotten through 1, 2, and 3. Let's hit 4. All right. Number 4 is always making sure others know the boundary is not about them. This is important. Boundaries are never about other people. Boundaries are always about you, right? What works for you. But let them know that, because sometimes, it's not going to feel that way to them. Even when my kids are setting their boundaries, sometimes, I feel as if, it's about me. And I have to, remind myself that no, it's not. Anyway, these are the steps that you can take to set your boundaries. Okay. Now we're on section D. Let's move down to E. For each boundary, okay, you want to write down an action by a loved one that would make you feel as if your boundary was crossed. Okay. Be sure to let your loved ones know how you feel to help them avoid crossing your boundaries. Okay, so this is sort of a way to like discover your boundaries. All right, let's look at emotional boundaries. Okay, I know that I absolutely hate it, okay, when I am called too sensitive. So I'm just going to write TS, too sensitive. Okay. Or, okay, I'm even called, right, emotional. I don't like it because it implies to me, right, that you think something is wrong with me. And I know that nothing is wrong with me. But people say that, and that's like my hot button, right? So my boundary, my emotional boundary is to never call me too sensitive. Like once you call me too sensitive, it like I'm already triggered. Okay, so that's an example of an emotional boundary. Another emotional boundary is that I often feel disregarded. It's like a default that I've had since I was a kid. And I'm working on it and I'm getting very good at it. at not feeling disregarded, right? But when I feel disregarded, I don't like it. So I will tell the people I love that please don't make me feel, or help me not to feel, because it's not about them, right? It's always about you. Help me not to feel disregarded. So when I ask for something that you cannot do, then and I would go into, right, explaining. Okay, so emotional boundaries are or not emotional boundaries, but boundaries period, right? Boundaries are things that maybe trigger you, or lines that you don't want crossing. Okay, I'll give you another example of a boundary. I cannot stand liars. I cannot. And I'm not talking white lies, but I'm just talking like let's just say one of my loved one did something that they know that I would consider wrong, and that because they were too afraid to explain, they just lied. Like, that's an emotional boundary that I do not like being crossed, because, right, and I explain what happens is then it makes it hard for me to trust, because I'm already skeptical. And so I have to really work my way at being trusting again of that person, right? So I would explain that, the emotional boundary is to not lie to me is for me and for them. Okay. All right, let's move on to financial boundary. Okay. If I say that I am going to give you $100, I am going to give you $100. Okay. Or let's just say I'm going to help you pay a bill or something, right? I'm going to do it. A financial boundary that I don't want any of my loved ones to cross is to, let's just say they make a loan and then they say they're going to pay me back $100 a month, and then 1 month passes, 2 month passes, and they don't. That's a boundary. Like, they've crossed the boundary for me when they've done it, because I feel really strongly that when you work hard for your money, right, that if you're respectful of your money, then other people should be respectful too. That's a boundary. When somebody crosses that boundary, it gets frustrating, and then it hinders the relationship, or it hurts the relationship. Okay, so that's my boundary. So I have to make sure that that person or the people I love know what my boundaries are, my financial boundaries. Okay, physical. So a physical boundary, right, is like, for me, I don't like people touching me. Like, I don't like massages, right? So if you touch me when I don't want to be touched, that's a boundary that I have a hard time, it's difficult for me, and I will react in a specific way. And so I have reasons as to why that is, and so I'll explain it. Now, don't get me wrong. While I'm creating, I have these boundaries, I'm trying to work on, not letting the boundaries dictate how I live, but they're still boundaries, and they're there for a reason. And if they're there, you need to acknowledge them, because they are a part of you. Now, whether you want to fix them or not, everyone needs to be aware. Okay, now sexual boundaries. From the very beginning, wait, let me go back. So physical boundaries don't just have to deal with like physical space and proximity, but they could just be like, even how you deal with health, like eating habits or swearing, right? That's one that I have difficulty with, right? So it'll differ from person to person. Sexual. Okay. When my husband and I were dating, okay, we got together, I think when I was 36 or 37. And we were dating, and we were a year apart, 2 different states, and we talked on the phone every day. And so we purposefully were trying to get to know each other in a very, because we were older, right? So I was looking to really get to know him over the course of that year. And it was funny because the day that we had our first date, I gave him my book, Candy Canes and Coke. And I said, you know what? I come with this, and you might not be able to handle it. So go read the book. And when you go home, or when you fly out, because he was leaving Hawaii, you need to tell me yes or no. And if it's no, we'll just leave it at that. But you need to know where I'm at, because I want you to know what you're dealing with. And if you can deal, great. And if, you know what I mean, if you can't, this was fun. But I was praying, okay, I was crossing fingers and crossing toes that he was going to say yes, which obviously he did. Okay, so again, we were getting to know each other, and I was trying to be like very, very transparent and in your face, because I wasn't looking for a maybe. I was looking for a forever. And I was expecting the same thing from him too. Well, one of the forevers, right, the like absolutely no go, was like anyone else being a part of our sex life. Like, hell no, right? And I know that's not something that everyone lives by. And so I just wanted to make it clear that, I mean, if that's something that he dreamed of, dude wasn't going to have it with me. So you have to find out for yourself what your boundaries are. And that takes a lot of introspection. That takes a lot of deep thought. That takes a lot of practice, trial and error. But the best thing when you know your boundaries is that you can set them and you can work on maintaining them, and you can start to grow really solid relationships. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. There are other relationships that I would like to work on, such as those with my sister and brother who live in Arizona. I love them. They love me. I could call them at any moment in time and they would be there for me. No doubt. I have no doubt in my mind. And I could call them crying and they would be there for me 100%. But I don't give them as much as I should in terms of love, gratitude, and thanks for just all they are to me. Oh my gosh, I'm sitting over here in front of a computer screen. I'm going to cry. Anyway, I'm still working on it. Okay. But the relationship, but I know that they're fine and they're happy. And that's the main thing. I needed to work on other relationships first. And of course they understood. And I have explained that too. I'm pretty sure. Maybe that's something I need to work on. Anyway, setting boundaries for yourself. I hope that you saw that setting boundaries for yourself is not easy, but it is absolutely necessary for your well-being, and then the people and the well-being of the people that you love. You might have to do this multiple times, and you might need to like really, really think and meditate and pray on this, because chances are, if you haven't done this, you have no clue what your boundaries are. So leave a comment or question or anything in the video, in the description or in the comment section, and let's all try and see if we can help each other. Okay, so if you just have no clue, or if you discovered something, just put it there. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking with us. I'm so proud of myself. And I'm so proud of all of you folks. We're on habit 21, and this is fun. Anyway, again, thank you, and I will see you in habit 22. Aloha.